everyone, and welcome to Illuminated Movement Astrology. This is Nikki, and I am your astrologer, talking today about the equinox, the spring equinox in the Northern Hemisphere, aka the Astrological New Year. And so, what does this mean? Well, this chart, just like any event chart or natal chart, shows the energetic imprint of the next astrological year coming up. And this one is, like all of 2024's charts, pretty darn intense. One of the biggest features about this chart is the Aries energy. This is not our typical Aries energy still in 2024. We'll talk about why. Let's take a look at the energy. And more importantly, let's discuss some ways in which you can use this energy to best help yourself moving forward. All right, so the 2024 Astrological New Year chart. I put it in 0-degree Aries because I know a lot of my subscribers are from different time zones. And so this way we have Aries on the ascendant and you can adjust for your own time zone. But in essence, wow, Aries energy, just not having the same kind of fire and bust through the wall and taking up space and saying, here I am. We don't really have that same energy this year. Why? Well, there's a few different reasons. The biggest reason has to do with our friend Neptune, which we'll get into a little bit more in a moment here. But Neptune, when we look at the hierarchy of the planets, which is really, really important in astrology, the hierarchy of the planets, it dictates who's in charge. Sun sign astrology has given us, I've said this before, I'll say it again, sun sign astrology has skewed our perception that the sun is pretty much like the end all be all in the chart, the sun and its sign. But that's not the case when you look at astrology charts as a whole, and we need to look at the whole context. So when we're talking about what planet is in charge, when we go all the way through who's in charge of what sign and where they're placed, it ends up at Neptune in its home sign of Pisces in the final degrees. Okay, the final degrees are 27, 28, and 29. And this is significant on 3 different levels, which we'll dive into in a moment. But what makes the chart the astrological new year, you may be asking, is when the sun reaches 0 degrees of the sign Aries. That is the starting point. So not in January, right, but in March. So if you're looking to start new things, you really want to get that new kind of energy, this is a great time going forward to kind of get a little bit more of that oomph, right? If we think of the seasons, this is when springtime is really happening. We're beginning to see the blossoms and the blooms and the leaves returning to trees and bushes and shrubs and things like that. So we can take that energy and think about how it applies to our own life. How do we want to take things and begin to blossom them? This isn't the high point. Remember, that's Taurus energy. Taurus as a fixed sign, as a sustaining energy, but this is the beginning energy. So what else is going on in this beginning energy? Well, if we take a look at what is currently placed in the sign of Aries, this gives us much more of a significant picture. So we're talking about the North Node in Aries, we're talking about Mercury, and we're also talking about the asteroid Chiron. So we have the Sun, North Node, Mercury, and Chiron. The North Node, Mercury, and Chiron all happen to be conjunct, meaning they're together like peanut butter and jelly. So their energy is going to be amplified for the whole of next year. Okay, no matter where the planets are traveling, we have this underlying undercurrent theme of North Node, Mercury, Chiron in the sign of Aries at the beginning of the zodiac. And why is this significant? Well, when we look at the North Node, this is part of the energy that we're being invited to move towards. We're being invited towards that Aries energy. To look at that, we have to look at what is the ruling planet of Aries, or if you prefer, the planet that's affiliated with Aries, which happens to be Mars, sitting in Aquarius. So we'll come back to that. But if we're looking at that North Node, we're looking at Aries. We're also looking at what's right next to it, which happens to be Mercury. What do we know about Aries energy? It likes to be first, it likes to be bold, it likes to, in a sense, act instinctively, right? Do the action first, think about it later. So we have that interesting interplay with how we are mentally processing things, how we're communicating. We may find that this year we're more inclined to blurt things out and then kind of see the consequences later and adjust. So we've got that kind of energy going on, sitting right next to Chiron. Now, Chiron is not a planet, it's an asteroid, but he is significant for a number of reasons. And the biggest thing that I want to point out about Chiron is Chiron tends to get reduced, right? He gets to be reduced down to just the places where we're wounded, just the wounded healer. If you look at Chiron's mythology, but that really does Chiron such a disservice because Chiron is not just the place where we are experiencing wounds that will never heal. He was a teacher, he was a mentor. He was taken in by Apollo and skilled in music and the arts and healing and alchemy and all kinds of manner of philosophy and negotiation. He was a mentor first, and he was wise. So this in our chart also represents the places where if we choose to engage with the energy, we can find high wisdom, we can find alchemy, we can find mentorship for ourselves, but really mentorship has to do with other people, right? So this is a place where we help ourselves when we can help other people. So that's something that we really have to pay attention to as well. Now, when we get this chironic energy, it can be painful. The mythology of Chiron was he was essentially an outcast. And so this can also be a place where we feel like we are an outsider. We feel like we don't fit in or we're not accepted or we've been abandoned in some way because there's something inherently wrong with us. And that gets underscored while Chiron is in Aries. Aries is that space where we come forward and we're, in a sense, unafraid. We're bold. We can just declare ourselves and take up space and say, I'm here and I matter. Right. And we're seeing some of the stories right now playing out on the world stage, because remember, these transit charts apply to everyone. How it applies to your chart is specific to you. But there is something here about speaking, wounding around speaking, wounding around thinking. What can we think? What can we say? How can we connect? How can we not connect? There's something here that's going on that's asking for our attention. It's asking for us to write a story, to rise above, to move beyond just what we would think of as maybe baser or lower, unskilled interpretations and actions around this. How can we be more skilled? How can we potentially think before we act? Tough, right? With all that Aries energy, but we can do it. How can we heal for some of us the places where we're afraid to take up space, or we're afraid that if we say something that goes against what everyone else is saying, doing, thinking, being, living out, that will be ostracized? That's a big story here, not just with Chiron, but also with Aquarius. So when we look at these planets, we're talking again about all these Aries planets. We have to look at the planet that's in charge of Aries, okay? And that planet is Mars. So we look at Mars. Mars is at 27 degrees of Aquarius. And Aquarius, amongst many things, is partially concerned with the collective, with humanitarian goals and efforts, places and spaces where we are aligned to groups or not. Right? Aquarius can also be the outsider. So we have that in common with that Chiron theme, that Aquarius theme, being left out, being not in the group potentially, or having to go along with the group or wanting to be a part of the group. That's a big thing here too. With Mars, it could be defending our right to be different or our right to be part of a group or defending or fighting on behalf of a group. We see a lot of that going on in the world as well. So having that kind of energy, Mars and Aquarius, really showing us where are our energetic pursuits, where are we putting our energy forward, what are our desires? And again, these are things that we can see on the world stage. What is going forward? Group think, group ideologies, realigning of what we think or how we can think or what we can say, clashes of words, right? Wars of words, war of ideologies. All of these kinds of things are going to be around for the next year. That doesn't mean that we have to get downtrodden or depressed about it because it is a little hard to see, particularly for people who are very sensitive, right? All of this clash that's going on in this time period is difficult. So just keep in mind that we can get past this, right? We can get past into a better place. And sometimes that means going through, sometimes pretty much all the time, it means through going through periods that are uncomfortable, right? Having to learn how to speak up for ourselves, defend ourselves, what we're passionate about as well. So, what in Aquarius are you passionate about? Could this be passion around your own genius, right? How you bring your own unique stamp to wherever Aquarius is on your chart. How can you bring that energy forward in a positive way? Because Mars, just like any of the planets, when they don't have something constructive to do, when we're not inviting their energy in a constructive, skillful, curious kind of way, when we don't incorporate them, they become distorted. That's when we see the shadow sides, the unskilled sides, the less than savory, the negative kinds of expressions of these planets. And we don't want Mars fighting for no reason, right? We want to give Mars something to do. We want to give Mars something that we can be passionate about, that we can be proud of, that we can move forward with. So think about where that is in your own chart and what that might mean for you as this next year unfolds. Of course, we've got Pluto at 1 degree Aquarius as well. So that's not something that's insignificant either. And I've talked about this in several other videos of what Pluto in Aquarius is beginning to look like. And again, we are seeing the shadow sides of group ideologies coming up, of what we think of as humanitarian efforts or what we think of in terms of science and technology. All of those kinds of things are being pulled up for us to look at because Pluto really wants to bring the underworld up for us to see. And that's not typically a pleasant experience for most of us. When you can understand how Pluto is working and why Pluto wants to bring these things up, you can understand that Pluto can be your friend. It really can. But you have to engage with Pluto as well. You have to be willing to look at the undersides of things and yourself in order to get to the buried treasure that Pluto has beneath all the gunk. Okay, he's really trying to show you things that need to change. So this could be something within yourself. This could be something that has to do with groups or things that you've been aligned with. Where is it maybe not what you thought? Okay. So we may have to see some different changing in, yeah, that's another piece I want to say. Also how we think, because Aquarius can be very, very inflexible. We think of Aquarius as progression and again as humanitarian and really pushing forward these, in a sense, utopian ideals. And that's very, very part of Aquarius. And it's a beautiful part of Aquarius because if we don't think about how we can make things better, what are we doing, right? We're kind of just in this loop of destruction. But the challenging part of Aquarius is intolerance, right? Just take all those things I just said and kind of invert them in a sense. So that's intolerance, inflexibility, right? What I or the group or whatever says is the only way. And anything outside of that is, bad and must be destroyed in a sense. So watch out for that as well. Watch out for it in yourself. Where are you inflexible in your thinking or with who you've been aligned with? Are you sure that the way you think is the only way? These are some of the ways that Pluto will be bringing up some of that Aquarian energy over the next year. And the other big place, of course, is technology and science. Having those things increasing at a rate that I don't think any of us really can predict, any of us really understand, but it's going to continue. When we talk about Aquarius, we also have to talk about Uranus. And Uranus has to do with, amongst other things, discoveries, revolutions, right? Pluto is evolution. So we have a revolution and an evolution. And we have discoveries going on at an accelerated pace. So all of these things are really propelling us forward in some way. And we really want to take a moment, use our Chiron wisdom, Where can you be wise? Where can you pause? Where can you use higher truth in order to get on the best track you can be, right? We don't want to get on the wrong bullet train right now, in other words, as we're going to really see things shifting incredibly fast over the next 20 years, not just the year of 2024 into 2025. So Uranus in Taurus, having us look at how we can innovate, how we can change, how we can free ourselves from what is known in the sign of Taurus. Now, Uranus has been in Taurus since 2018, so we've had some time here. And it's really felt for a lot of us, right? Like the ground is shaking, right? The things that we thought were stable are falling apart. And that's true. And there's a reason for it because we're being asked to look at what's stale, what has crystallized to the point where it is no longer growing, where there's no more discovery, where there's no more progression. Uranus will come along and say, hey, let's keep this going. Let's make new discoveries. Let's do something in a different way. And Taurus doesn't necessarily love that. Taurus has much more to do with security, right? Security of our body and our finances, our food sources, our any kind of resource or talent that we have. Taurus is about stabilizing those things. And that's very important. We need stability in addition to other energies. But right now, we still have Uranus saying it's time to innovate. It's time to change. With all this energy, we've got all this Aries saying, all right, time to do new things, time to go forward, time to take up space in a new way. We've got this Aquarius energy, right? Because that's where Mars is sitting, saying similar things, right? Pluto, time to evolve, time to get rid of what's no longer working. Uranus in Taurus, saying the same thing. What's no longer working? What needs to change so that we can create a new sense of stability? This is a lot. This is a very, very intense year. And the other places that we need to look, which we haven't talked about yet, are all the Pisces planets, which are super important. And I promised I would talk about Neptune. And we need to look at also this south node. But if we really pause for a moment here, and with the exception of the moon, we've got all the planets in the last two signs, in the first two signs. And this really shows us where we are standing on this threshold between what is old and what is crumbling and what is dying out, right? We're hearing that death rattle of so many of the things that need to change, but we haven't quite stabilized yet the new energies, right? We're beginning these new things. The buds are blossoming, but we haven't really maybe quite figured out what kind of fruit this tree is going to bear, if any at all. So that's where we are. And this is a big, 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 big challenging time period to keep faith. And when we talk about faith, when we talk about philosophy, when we talk about going beyond, when we talk about higher truths, we also have to talk about Jupiter. Jupiter sitting right next to Uranus. And so Jupiter emphasizing, elevating, right, making bigger this Uranian energy in the sign of Taurus. So really emphasizing to us the importance of what we ground, what we want to have sustained, what do we want to put our security in. Taurus is always asking the question, what is worth it? Is this worth your time? Is this worth your resources? Is this worth your physical health, for example? So when we're looking at all of these changes, when we're looking at what's going on with the world, when we're looking at what kinds of groups we want to align with or not, when we're looking at where we want to put our mind, our thinking process, right? That Mercury, that Chiron, where do we want to put it? Is it Taurus aligned with your values? How have those changed? Is it worth it? There are so many things pulling at our attention right now, and it's going to get even louder. There's going to be more competition for your attention coming up over the next couple of years. Where is it important that you put it? Where is it valuable? Is it worth it? Really pause. Taurus can take a pause. Taurus is a patient sign. Taurus is an enduring sign. take a pause before you leap. Okay. Especially if it's something that seems to kind of drop out of nowhere. That can be really, really tempting with this Uranian energy and also with this Piscean energy, which I'll get to in a moment, the crescendo energy here. But when we're talking about Jupiter, Jupiter is, let me clear this out because I've got so many drawings going on here. But when we're talking about Jupiter, okay, sitting next to Uranus, Jupiter is the ancient ruler of Pisces. So Jupiter also powerful here because we've got these additional planets in Pisces. And we've got Jupiter sitting next to Uranus, right? Uranus is one of the planets in charge of Aquarius. So that would be in charge of also Pluto and Mars. And so when we look at Jupiter, what can we put our faith in? Where do we feel like we can have some luck? What do we want to elevate? What do we want to expand? And people love to talk about Jupiter as though Jupiter can do no wrong, as though Jupiter has no downside. And that's incredibly myopic. I think that has a little bit to do with this Pisces energy as well, but that's incredibly myopic because all of the planets have their unskilled sides, their negative sides, their downsides, whatever you want to call it, their shadow sides. They have it too. So even Jupiter, yes, even Venus, she's got them also. We need to look at what is the downside here. So Jupiter, do you want Jupiter to expand certain things, right? When we look at stuff that's going on in the world, inflation is a big one, right? Food shortages, food being bioengineered, right? This is also part of that Uranian technology. Do we want that? Do we want expansion of our monetary systems being devalued? Do we want that? Do we want expansion of human beings being replaced in certain capacities? Do we want that? Maybe you do. This isn't about judgment, although Jupiter can be very, very judgmental. We're talking about, is this worth it? Is this worth it in the long run? Because remember, Taurus is about sustaining. What do we want to sustain? And right now, with everything moving so quickly, all these things pulling at our attention, there can maybe seem like, well, let's just say yes in the short term so we can move on. And that may not be the best choice. So again, if you can take a grounded moment, if you can take a stabilizing moment and say, is this something I want to build, that I want sustained, that I want as a theme for a long time going forward? Ask yourself, is this worth it? And if it is, put your resources there, right? Put your time, money, energy, love, support, whatever it is, put it into that thing. If it's not, withdraw. Does that make sense? If you continue to fight things, remember, you're putting more energy into them. So you're actually expanding them. With Taurus, be really intentional about what you are giving your energy to, what you want expanded. Okay. So just take a note of that. Now, at the beginning, I talked about Neptune. I got to talk about Neptune because Neptune is the final planet, the final one in charge. If we go through all of the different planets, right? So even if, for example, Jupiter, if we're using modern rulerships, Jupiter, right, in Taurus answers to Venus. Where's Venus? Well, she's in Pisces, right? Who rules over Pisces? Well, we could say Jupiter if we were just going to do the ancient rulers, and that would go back and forth in a mutual reception. But we also have to look at Neptune. And I think not including the modern rulers is just as problematic as disincluding the ancient rulers. Because the modern planets are here for a reason. They came into our awareness for a reason. And not including them, I think, is to our detriment. So when we look at the final planets, Neptune is a ruler of Pisces sitting in his own sign. So end of the line there. When we go through any of these other planets, we come to the same conclusion. It will come back to Neptune and Pisces at the final degrees, 27 degrees of Pisces. So anytime a planet reaches the final degrees, it's energy gets turned up. That spinal tap dial gets turned up to 11. And right now we have got Neptune turned up to 11. And it will stay that way until Neptune moves into Aries in 2025 or 2026. Oh goodness, I should know that for certain. And it was going to be here for at least the next year and a little bit more. So, Neptune. Let's talk about how we use Neptune because Neptune's a tricky planet. Neptune has to do with things that are transcendent, with the connection we have to spirit, to source, to God, to things that are bigger than we are, that are bigger than the cosmos. They call it in quantum, theory, the field as well. All of those kinds of things are in Neptune's land. Neptune, the god of the sea, takes us down into the depths of our soul. And it can be, if you've ever been underwater, things can look a little different, right? The light is different. We can't, as humans, breathe underwater in the same way after we're born, right? Communicating underwater becomes different. When you go too deep and you come up too fast, right? If any of you are familiar with scuba diving, it's very, very dangerous. Going to depths and coming up too fast, very, very dangerous. And so we need to remember that when we're dealing with Neptune. Neptune can be a beautiful planet. It's an incredible planet that shows up on musicians' charts, actors' charts, people involved in the arts in some way, those who are able to channel, and not just mediumship, although it could be mediumship, but those who are able to tap into something that's beyond themselves. Right? Writers can do this. All of us have this capacity because we all have Neptune somewhere in our chart. But it's a place where we can go beyond just the ordinary into the extraordinary. And when Neptune is in Pisces, Pisces shares a lot of these traits as well, but Pisces is a little bit different because it's its own sign. So we're talking about Pisces, we're talking about what is unbounded, right? That which has no boundaries. We're talking about compassion. We're talking about agape love, not just conditional love, but unconditional love. And what does that actually mean? We're talking about places where we can be sacrificing, where we can be charitable, where we can give for the sake of giving. And all of these things are incredible and they're beautiful. And when you put Pisces and Neptune together, that's a pretty powerfully awesome, sublime combination of elements until it isn't. So we need to use Neptune in a specific way. We need to be cautious with Neptune, the same as we would if we were going to go deep sea diving, right? At a certain point under the sea, you're not going to do so well. Same thing if you come up too fast. So what are the pitfalls of Neptune and Pisces, particularly at this final degrees, volume turned up? One of the big ones is illusion, delusion, not seeing things clearly. Okay. When we don't see things clearly, when we are in a state of delusion, when we are in a state of fogginess, let's say, we're not seeing the whole picture and we're not seeing what's really there. And that's difficult right now. And globally, this is also difficult because Neptune has to do also with media. Okay. Things that are in media include, all of the terminology that we hear, legacy media, but it's also art, it's music, I think it also has to do with a little bit of social media as well, because a lot of that, we don't know if it's real or not. AI, we don't know if that's real or not. Where money is right now, the way it keeps getting less and less tangible, right? Fiat currencies and things like that. We don't have a tangible source for them. They're very elusive in a sense. So we have to be careful with all of those things. We have to be careful about, in Pisces, losing touch with reality. Okay. Even things that seem like they're great, like for example, the rise of things like, people getting addicted to spirituality, getting addicted to being out of their body, getting addicted to plant medicines in ways that go beyond. Again, we're talking about addiction. We're talking about escapism. We're not talking about using it in a small, controlled, skilled way. We're talking about going beyond that. And it's very, very tempting right now to go beyond that. It's very tempting to want to escape what's going on planet Earth right now, right? How many times a day, if you go on any social media, do you hear the term ascension? It's like there's so much of it, right? People talking about escaping the 3D. And again, I'm sorry, we live in the 3D. We are physically manifested, right? So things that we bring from the other realms, if we don't understand what we're tapping into, it's kind of like diving to the bottom of the ocean. You don't really know what's down there. And if you go too far and you come up too fast, bad things are going to happen to you physically. That's not healthy. And so we have to be aware of that when we're talking about Neptune. This is really, really important. We have to be aware of what we hear, what we see, right? It may not be real. And so, what do we need? What's the antidote to all of this Neptune, literally presiding over every single planet in the sky right now? What is the antidote to Neptune? Well, there's two things. One, use Neptune in a constructive way. Invite Neptune in. Can you do more music? Can you walk around and hum a song, right? Sing in the shower, whatever. Can you go swimming? Can you tap into things that are creative? Can you connect yourself to a higher spiritual practice, but also ground it? Go back into Taurus, right? But not just Taurus, we've got to look at the opposite sign of Pisces, which is our beautiful friend Virgo. Pisces is as above, Virgo is so below. Pisces says, right, oh, we'll just include everything and anything. We'll be a chameleon. Virgo says, not so sure that's the best way to go. Virgo's great gift to us right now is discernment. And we need it more than ever. We need to be able to discern what is real, what is not real, what is worth our time, what is not worth our time. Okay, we need serious Virgo. Okay, so when we look at the signs, we have to look at them in pairs. And so we want to look at Pisces and Virgo as a pair. Now, the downside of Virgo, of course, which can show up in Pisces, it can also show up in Pisces, is being too critical, right? Shutting something down. Okay, cancel culture. We can see cancel culture everywhere on the chart right now. That's so much of what we're talking about in Pisces and Aquarius. And again, they're opposite signs, Leo and Virgo, right? If you do not agree with who's the leader, Leo, right, you get kicked out of the group. If you do not agree with whatever illusion we're feeding you in Pisces, Virgo will kick you out of the group. That's a lot right now. When we look at Chiron in Aries, if you don't go along with whatever is the prescribed thing, you're out, right? It's hard. It's not easy. We have to really sit down and figure out what is our own truth. What does that mean? And then our actions, right? Aries, Mars, have to line up with that. That's integrity, right? When what we think, what we feel, who we are internally matches externally. That's integrity. And that's one of the big challenges right now in 2024. Has been for a little while, but it's going to be this year as well. So looking at all of that, what do we do with that Pisces energy, right? Again, use discernment, use it wisely. Don't run away from the Pisces energy, right? We also have Saturn here. Saturn's another ruler of Aquarius. So Saturn helping us in Pisces. Pisces is no boundaries. Saturn is boundaries. So dissolving boundaries, yes, in certain ways. Dissolving walls to things, yes. That's also that Pisces influence, that Neptunian influence with Saturn there. But we really want to be careful what it is we are breaking down and dissolving. Is that something that you want to be gone forever, ever? Okay. Not everything right now that has come from the past is bad. And in fact, there's a lot of things, a lot of ancient traditions coming back up, and we can really see that with Saturn and Pisces as well. These ancient wisdom, because Saturn also has to do with wisdom, coming back so that we can integrate the lost pieces of so many of the traditions that got broken apart during the age of Pisces, that 2000 plus year cycle that is coming to an end right now. So looking at all of that, it's like, whoo, right? This is a lot. There are certain aspects here that are definitely interesting. One of them being this Pluto opposite the moon. Okay. If you recall back to January of 2024, I know it seems like forever ago because time is moving at a different rate now. We had this same configuration during that full moon, and we see it again at this new moon chart as well. So if you think back to the end of January and what was going on then, what were you hoping to see come forward? Checking in with it. How is it doing now? How are you integrating that Leo moon, that need to feel special and feel seen and to do things that are in some way honoring your inner heart, right? Some people call that the inner child, but that inner sense of play and fun and vitality. How are you able to tap into that? Because that's really important right now. The challenge is not getting obsessed with it, right? Pluto, getting obsessed with that inner child. You wounded me, right? That Leo kind of, if you hurt my feelings, I'll never speak to you again kind of thing. How can you integrate that between the self, Leo is a self-focused energy, and Aquarius, the group energy? How is that going? How can you share your special gifts or share yourself in a way out in the world with the collective? How can you use that outside the box to make things better for yourself and potentially for other people, right? Remember, this doesn't have to be a vocation. It could just be you being you, right? Reminding other people that they don't have to fall into the collective delusion, right? With all that Pisces energy right now, that there is another way. So that's a really beautiful, interesting energy. The other thing that's interesting that's coming up, and it hasn't quite formed yet, but it's getting closer, is this, excuse me, Quincunx energy to the South Node. So we've got the South Node at 15 Libra, with Jupiter at 14 Libra, and Saturn over here at 12. So Saturn's in a weak Quincunx here. But as we come up on the eclipses, this Saturn energy is going to be really prominent and is going to come up against that South Node in a bigger way. Right now, it's still forming, but I find it interesting that this will create, as we come up to the eclipses, a yod, the finger of God, right? The finger of fate, pointing to that South Node in Libra. What do we need to let go of? Remember, quincunx energy, this 150-degree energy, is uncomfortable. It's like an itch that you can't scratch, but it's just getting more and more itchy. Okay. So there's something that we are being invited to let go of from the Libra part of our chart, wherever that is in your chart, that is, it's time for it to go. So whether that's an old story, an old belief, right? We're talking about Jupiter here, ways in which you valued your self-worth or didn't, things like that. Perhaps partnership. How have you been in partnerships with other people? Remember, when we're talking about Libra, Libra isn't always, the nice one. Libra can be the manipulative one, can be the Aries, right? Version where they're really, really nice because they want things to go their way. We tend to associate that with Scorpio, but Scorpio is much more, that's got a different energy there. But Libra can definitely be manipulative. Libra is a negotiator energy, right? Have you ever witnessed a negotiator that was really, really good at getting people to give up, right, their sense of self, or maybe what they wanted, ask them to compromise too much? Okay, that's something that can go on with Libra that doesn't always get talked about, but it's certainly something that in a South Node sense, because remember, the South Node brings up kind of the junk that we want to let go of. Okay, it's the elimination side of the dragon, right? If we look at the North Node as the head of the dragon, the South Node is the tail. Well, what comes out the tail, right? The shit you want to eliminate. Okay, just to say it kind of out there. So what shit from Libra do you want to eliminate in your life? Okay. And you can see this, maybe it's not necessarily coming up strongly in your own life. Maybe it's coming out more in the world or people with whom you partner or interact with or have some kind of Libra as one-on-one relationships and contracts, something there. Maybe it's the way you've done contracts in business. Maybe, it's you that's actually giving your clients, right, kind of the short end of the stick, maybe out of fear, right? We've got that Chiron over in Aries of not having enough for yourself. Maybe that's something you need to take a look at. It might not be the other person. Okay. Sometimes with Libra and also with the seventh house kinds of planets, whatever we have there, that's something that we can project. And with all this outer planet energy, right, and these outer signs, this Aquarius, this Pisces, even this Libra, what are we projecting onto the other that maybe we need to look at in ourselves, right? So just taking a look at that as well. Because when we're talking about Jupiter and Saturn, we're talking about, right, that wisdom to be able to see the difference, to have higher truth, to be able to look at things that are uncomfortable. Okay. So if there's repeating patterns in your life, it's like, Groundhog's Day in some area of your life. This year is the time to look at where are you contributing to the problems that you see playing out in your negotiations, in your contracts, in your dealings, in your relationships with other people. Okay, it's not the easiest energy to look at, but there are times when you are contributing to your own suffering. And that's something with this Pisces energy, with this Neptune, with this Chiron in Aries, with this Jupiter energy in Taurus. Where are you contributing to your own suffering? It's very, very popular right now to be, I don't want to say this. It's very popular right now to engage with self-victimization. And that's another shadow side of that Pisces and Virgo axis is martyrdom, right? Saviors and martyrs, those kinds of things. So take a look at that. Take a look at that in your own chart. Where does this energy fall within your own chart? Where are you seeing this playing out on the world stage or perhaps with people in your own life? So all things to take a look at as we go through 2024. So again, not that straightforward Aries energy, even though the sun is here. Remember, we're not talking about sun sign energy, sun sign astrology. We're talking about the entire chart. So we have to look at the planets of a whole. And this is a very, very interesting year for certain. So looking at all that energy, can you see now why I said this is not a typical Aries year? This is not just to pick up the flag and charge forward, although that may be part of what you are growing into. But we have to look at so much of the other energy. It's always imperative that we look at the entire chart, not just the sun sign of any given chart. So I hope this was helpful. I'll be talking about the eclipses coming up because this energy definitely opens up the eclipses that are happening in just a few days. So take a look at your own chart, take a look at where this energy falls, and ask yourself, what is old, what is new? Right? Where do you need to share things? Where might you be projecting energy, wounded energies, or things that you're still holding that needs to go? Because that could be the energy that's really it's the key. It's like the linchpin. And a lot of this, because of that personal energy, has to do with us personally. How are we contributing to our own suffering that we see reflected out into the larger collective? If you need help with your chart, you can pop over to my website and book an appointment with me where we can take a look at all of the specific pieces of your chart and how this energy is playing out for you. All right, that's it for now. Take care until next time.